all here. Go ahead.
Exactly. Hey, everybody.
You talk about blockchain for an hour and then you're like, this wasn't on.
You're like, oh my God. Or like you're talking about stuff and it's live and you're like, what? It's live? I didn't realize. Hey, everybody. Hey, welcome to Business SHEnanigans and another episode. I think it's our fourth. And so we've done 4 episodes of this. I am Kathy Klotz-Guest, and along with me, as you know, is Kerry Gorgone. And I am with Keeping It Human, and she is the lovely director of the Marketing Smarts podcast. And we have a special guest today. I'm very excited about it. A lot of people were very excited to learn about blockchain. So our special guest today is, you know him. He doesn't really need an introduction, but he's going to get one. And that is Chris Brogan. He's a CEO of Owner Media Group. And if you're like me, you read some of his books, Trust Agents and Impact Equation and all that good stuff. So welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, ladies. Happy to be part of the SHEnanigans.
You're an honorary SHEnaniganite. What would that be? Would it be? Yeah.
You're just so warm and fuzzy and cute. We were like, he can hang with the girls. It's okay.
I am.
Hang with the girls.
Completely safe and normal.
Exactly. No, we are happy to have you. I was saying before sort of we turned on the broadcast, and welcome to everybody. Welcome. If you've got questions, do let us know you're here. You can type those little questions in. And if you've got questions, we will try to answer it. But I was saying to both Chris and to Kerry that there's so much noise, I think, out there and hype about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain in general. And I think people kind of conflate AI and machine learning. And there's all these things that get bandied about. And I think there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of jargon monoxide poisoning, as Chris has heard me say before, and I hate that. And I think there's just a lot of a lack of clarity as to what it is and why we need it and why we should even care. And will it match my wardrobe? And those are really important questions.
A lot of people, I don't think, have heard about blockchain as something separate from cryptocurrency. They just think those two things are the same thing.
They think they are the same thing. And I've heard people, in fact, at Social Media Marketing World, Chris, after you and I spoke, people were using them interchangeably. And I said, I'm not an expert here, but I don't think they're interchangeable. So
I don't think they are.
But I'm pretty sure they're not. So
can I buy this with blockchain?
Exactly. So that's where Chris comes in. Chris, I don't know where we start. How do you explain
in the woods, I guess. So there's a couple things with blockchain. There's 2 things to know right out of the gate. I would say that so if you think of blockchain as a different kind of internet, and I'll get back to this analogy in a second, but if you think of it as like a different kind of internet, Bitcoin is kind of like Snapchat. It's an app on a blockchain. It is not the blockchain. So blockchain, so what an internet does, what the internet does, especially the World Wide Web, is it distributes information. Like that's what it's built to do. That's what media, text, all those kinds of things that we send across, that's information. Blockchain distributes trust. And when they say that, they mean that it distributes value. It distributes all kinds of opportunity to connect with people and not have to have human intervention for certain kind of validations and verifications. So in one way, when we talk about blockchain, it is super ridiculously boring. It's kind of like a database. It is a shared ledger that allows you to like record a whole bunch of transactions that can in no way be altered. So it's so unsexy, but it's distributed, which means that thousands of computers validate it at any one time. And that means that no one can hack it. It means that, you can't, when we have those things like credit companies get hacked and all of a sudden several million data records are stolen, like Equifax and all that, that doesn't happen. And so there's that. And so there's all kinds of little applications being made. And it's really just like the internet was in 1994. Nothing is so clear yet. The closest one we have is, Bitcoin. And so if we had some slightly better serving suggestions, we'd have a much better time talking about this. But we got what we got right now. So that's part of the challenge.
People still don't get it that one company changed its name to Long Island Blockchain, and all of a sudden this stock skyrocketed because people are like, I don't know what it is and I don't get it, but it's important. Take my money.
take my money. And the other weird thing is, one reason I don't want to talk so much about cryptocurrency, one, it's not interesting to me, but two, the other thing is that there are so many Wild West moments going on right now with it. There's so much opportunity for scam. There's a lot of people ripping people off a couple $1 million at a time right now with these crypto ICOs, initial coin offerings. And so I think that one of the reason I want to really distinguish and separate is because the kind of stuff that I'm interested in has nothing to do with can I get rich in a couple of weeks. It's more like, can I help a farming business? Can I help a medical records transcription? Can I start working on platforms that keep my data safe, for instance, instead of giving it to any old advertiser who comes along, for instance.
So when people say blockchain is going to revolutionize marketing and they stop there, like, what is the next part of that sentence?
Well, first off, they're full of baloney. That sentence is not especially useful. I mean, except in that sort of way that like the internet was. The internet's going to change things. Well, way back in 94, 95, that would have meant like, blinking dash marks around a piece of text at the top of a page. It was like the least accurate truth in the world. But, the fact that there's, it's programmable, the fact that you can distribute kind of anything. So you can make apps like this new version of sort of LinkedIn replacement tool called doc.io that allows you to kind of keep control of your data, and then other apps can get written on it, but you control that data all the way through. So, Doc says, hey, someone wants to know, your location because they think it's useful to them. You can say yes or no. So that kind of trust and control and all that sort of thing, that's pretty neat. So there's a lot of stuff like that going on.
So is that why you got interested in it? Because you have a whole bunch of resources you share with people on your website about it. And I'm always interested in what kind of tips you off that this is, or that this is important, that people should know about it.
Yeah. So, for instance, we have Mitch Jackson, streaming lawyer here. And one of the things that it does very different is that it most definitely allows for help with the legal world. There's a lot of transaction and contract stuff put in also, Kerry, that allow you to execute contracts without having humans handy. Meaning Imogene Heap, for instance, released an album on the Mycelium network, I think it's called. It's another blockchain. And you could download one of her songs for 99 cents, or for 50 grand, you could put it in your movie. And you didn't need a lawyer for either because it was just it was all put together. So there's like all these different executions out there, and there's all these different kinds of chains starting up that all are starting to give their own view of how they think this will be implemented. And that's going to confuse people for a while to come to. But there's some neat stuff happening early. And like IBM has over 400 clients already doing cool different things. So that's kind of fun too.
That's insane. I just want to get to some comments, and unfortunately, I don't know why. I'm trying to share, and it's not letting me share, and I don't know why.
You're
that's
bad
happening,
at sharing is why.
I think it's just doing some very strange stuff. I know. I don't know what's going on here. And so we've got some comments here. Mitch is saying, hey, Amanda Robinson. Hey, Amanda. She's saying blockchain means transparency. And so kind of, I think one of the big things that I think everyone's hoping for, I think, if I understand correctly with blockchain, is that there will be greater trust because it's sort of decentralized, and you will know what parts are what and what's broken and where. And so, Chris, do you think, you wrote Trust Agents, where does this fit into sort of the whole trust factor? Because it seems to me that that's a big part of this whole thing.
I can sort of hint that my next book will be sort of a spiritual sequel to Trust Agents based on things like blockchain. So that would tell you how I feel about that. I would say that there's a lot of that in there. So for instance, like application in the healthcare, mediated health data exchange. So some massive amount of your health records, like you two ladies specifically, are still on paper in a office somewhere, where some human has access to it, and then might also be able to just throw it out to other people at a whim, lose parts of it. A folder gets dumped accidentally into, Gorgon instead of Gorgon, and, next thing you know, part of Kerry's life is missing because, Madge didn't file right. So there's all this opportunity for access that I think is going to change everything. The opportunity for clinical trial management, for instance. There's just all these things where you can put systems in play that are going to make it work a lot better. Food safety, for instance, China is using blockchain to track a lot of its food from the agriculture side, and they've actually implemented, totally true story, facial recognition for chickens, which makes me think of that Portlandia episode.
I'm like a chicken racist. I thought they all looked alike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a chicken racist too, and they taste delicious. I'm sorry.
Turns out. So, should you get avian food? Yeah, Dave. Should you get avian food, you want to know kind of which farm that came from, and that's now part of how this works. So I think there's some really cool stuff. It's just, the early days of this, people are going to be kind of running around like a chicken with their head cut off. So
I can recognize that chicken.
Poor chickens. Well, it's really interesting because one of the folks here, Kipster, who I know from the comedy scene here in San Francisco, he's saying crypto is so hot in San Francisco that the Comedy Couch San Francisco will be taking crypto payments in April. So they're going to be using crypto payments.
So again, with crypto, sort of the using it as a currency alternative, there are some weird stories like that. I mean, what got me into Bitcoin specifically and not blockchain was that the Fred Wilson from AVC was talking about the fact that he once bought like a T-shirt for like 19 Bitcoins, and of course that person was suddenly worth like at the time 19 Bitcoins was kind of worth nothing, and now that person, should they have held on to those, is worth like whatever like 8,000 times 19 is. So at the time that he wrote that thing, he was like, I sort of accidentally bought like an $8,000 T-shirt or whatever. So it's definitely, I think that Comedy Couch is really smart for doing that. I think people are fairly dumb for currently using those tools as a currency, because it's sort of like saying, here's 5,000, $40. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not hinged to anything, which is why that's the least interesting part to me. It's like, it's just too unstable. So I'm always trying to look at the bigger storylines.
Well, and Mitch says something here. He says that lawyers can contribute to the rise of it by understanding it. And that's such an important point, because Mitch and I have had the same conversation, which is so much of what we see in technology is that we have legislators who don't understand technology making decisions about technology that they don't understand. And so there's such a lag between understanding it and then voting on it or shaping legislation that will hinder or help. And so I kind of always get a little nervous when sorry Mitch, but Mitch probably will be the first to agree with me. I get nervous when so much of technology also depends on legislative forces, because we've got so many folks out there that don't really understand it. I mean, are you talking to people out there that shape it legislatively? Do they understand it? What are you hearing?
So there was actually, specific to cryptocurrency again, which, like I said, is not my thing. There was actually just a congressional hearing on that yesterday. So Jody Rich, who in the past has run companies like Cred, he still runs Cred, but he's doing some other stuff. Empire Avenue, which became Empire Cred, People Browser. Jody actually flew out to the hearings just so he could try to give some opinion on there and kind of help and share that. So I am not personally going out to Congress. If they want to send me a bag of money, I guess I'll go hang out. But
Bitcoin.
The companies that I serve, however, they are having to watch this really closely. I mean, there's all kinds of implementations of this that are really hinging on law, to your point. Cannabis law, for instance. So one way to kind of obfuscate the current cash problem, because all United States cannabis companies can't bank. They're now technically unbanked, just like a poor person on the plains of Ghana somewhere. They are sort of mattress stuffing cash because there's no other method or opportunity to do that. And so what ends up happening is there's a question of how else can we exchange the value. Another way to use blockchain in that same industry, by the way, is how do you know that what you said you bought is what you bought? How do you know that what is it? A chain of evidence? Is that what it's called, Kerry? You should probably know that. How do you know that the chain of evidence was maintained all the way from the farm to
little
the distributor?
plastic baggies and paper seals?
Yeah. So
like cosmetic bags.
Exactly, like cosmetic bags. Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's really a fascinating thing to me. I also sort of, Chris, so much of this is it reminds me a lot of big data, when big data sort of surfaced a few years ago, and it was like, big data is the next big thing. And it was like sex. Everybody was talking about it. A few people were doing it, right? And it was like, so many small businesses got the message, big data. But I don't think they really understood how it related to them. And I would ask sort of the same thing about what we're talking about with blockchain. What do small businesses need to know? How will it affect them? Because I'm not sure a lot of us understand that.
I want to clarify that I'm having sex. So there you go.
Duly noted. I'm going to have to update my
Yeah. So someone might be talking about it. I don't know, but I'm there. Okay. So the answer is, what do small businesses have to do? Actually, this is very much a what's the word I want to use? This is very much a level set for small businesses, because it allows for, there are a lot of different blockchain systems and alliances that are going to allow that if you actually implement your systems to mesh with the rest of the blockchain, you will be able to compete and or contribute alongside of the big guys. So Penske Trucking just joined a very big blockchain alliance for Blockchain in Transit Alliance or something, I think it's called, BITA. And if you are JoJo's Trucking with 3 trucks in Poughkeepsie, you can still be part of that alliance, and you can still actually slot your stuff into the blockchain system. Danish company Block Shipping has announced their first Nordic shipping product, which relates to the global shared container platform. Container vehicles coming in and out of China and other parts of the world full of the stuff we order every day, that will be protected by blockchain, which doesn't happen right now. We lose shipping containers to the tune of billions to trillions of dollars every year. And so suddenly there'll be a windfall there. Little companies, if they want to kind of stuff their things in shipping containers, are going to have better access, just like they have better access to other things like PayPal, Stripe, Square, those kinds of things. If you are a blockchain app user, which by the way, you could download so much of this crap for free and start working on it now. If you are using this stuff, you're going to have a leg up on the other people. So not unlike big data, big data is something reasonably useful to other people, but you kind of have to use some strategy to decide what you're going to do with it. But for instance, in the land of self-driving cars in the Bay Area, if you're a mom and pop, newspaper stand, you might have to start figuring out early where the routes are most likely going to be, what you're going to do to kind of make up, because self-driving cars aren't going to stop at mom and pops on a whim, right? And so you have to start, just like with big data, you have to start thinking, how am I going to implement and what's going to make this work for me?
Yeah, that's such a great point. And just jumping on the self-driving cars, just because I'm in the Bay Area, so I'll jump on that. It's really fascinating because you're right. When you think about the ripple effect, I mean, we're even discussing now, like I know people in the insurance business, and they're talking about disruptive technology and how it's going to change insurance. I mean, think about self-driving cars for a second. Who takes on the liability? Where does that get transferred to? How will it shape and disrupt insurance? And insurance is not a sexy business, but when you think about how that will change, who then owns, in the case of an accident, the liability for that, that's really an interesting kind of proposition. So I think it sounds like it's very similar with blockchain. You got to start thinking about a lot of these things now and how that ripple will happen.
Whoever has more money, that's
whoever has more money, that's who you sue. It just is
very, you can most easily bear it.
Well, and Mitch goes, what, you don't trust our politicians? You know the answer to that, my friend. No.
I'm kind of sad. I might be the only person who's a little sad that all of a sudden shipping containers won't go missing, because I kind of love like the unclaimed baggage center. I'm like, man, I got a really awesome pair of sunglasses there for like $20. I'll never get it now. People stop losing things.
Thanks, blockchain.
Purely selfish.
Exactly. Jerks. It's blockchain jerks. Michael, hey, Michael. He's asking sort of more of a related back to cryptocurrencies, Chris. He's saying, what do you make of the fact that much of those invested in and interested in cryptocurrencies and related technology are something like 80 to 90% male? So the investment, the companies, the VC funding, it's going to dudes. It's going to crypto dudes.
Well, Chris is 100% male, so
he's 100% male. He's not 80% male, but he's 100% male.
Yeah, there's a this follows historically a trend, and it's one of those kind of causation and correlation things that I'm not smart enough to know, but I can tell you that guys on average tend to be the first ones to try poking around really strange places first. Like, what's this button do? What? That was not innuendo. That was in my endo. So then the opportunity starts there. But I mean, there's a lot of really cool opportunities there, for what, female-led applications and whatnot. But I don't know that anyone's actually sort of sliding it down. But, a lot of the things blockchain fixes are fairly less traditionally fun anyway, like supply chain stuff, governing stuff, supply chain visibility, fraud and compliance, so the kind of people who are really into that are the kind of people who are going to know how to implement and start spending money there. I think that, the crossover, I think, like I said, with cannabis business, that's a hugely female business right now. The United States, Jane West got $145 million for VC money to start hers.
Oh,
there's all kinds of things like that going.
Yeah.
So that could maybe be the first place we see female blockchain startups, is to support a female heavy business like cannabis.
I think that's really fascinating, because you're right, Michael. Thanks for the question. It really is, and it's something that we're discussing. Actually, Chris, there's so much discussion going out in Silicon Valley right now about that very issue. Is that and it's not just cryptocurrencies or anything to do with blockchain. It goes beyond that. Just the VC funding in general tends to be out here very male dominated, and yet there's so many opportunities for different companies to have a blockchain hook somehow, a legitimate hook, and to get funded. And the question is it's a great one, Michael. Will we see more female businesses? I think we will. And I think your point about the marijuana industry is right. I think a lot of that, in fact, at social media marketing world, I was telling you, Chris, that in the last year with the legalization, I've seen more medicinal marijuana marketing companies who specialize in just that industry showing up to trade shows and conferences, and that's what they specialize in. And it's pretty interesting.
It's the first thing I think when I get high, is I want to do some blockchain.
Am I on the blockchain now?
Right?
I get so, I start thinking about blockchain and crypto when I get high, and I start thinking about how they all relate to each other.
And Doritos.
And Doritos. And Lady Doritos, excuse me. Lady
Doritos. Right. Lady Doritos.
What a great product idea that is. That's what I start thinking about. but that's such a great question. Thanks, Michael. Mitch says, blockchain tech allows for global sourcing and collaboration. How do you see blockchain tech being used for marketing, branding, and biz relationships?
It's not utterly there yet, but there's some really cool things going on. Next week, I have a conversation with Jared Dicker, formerly of the Washington Post and HuffPost, who's started a company called Poet, or at least taken over their CEO role, po.et. So everyone can go right now to po.et, Poet, and you can see a media blockchain platform. So that's where you're going to start seeing how this works. And one of the ways it works is that again, if you remember that trust, value, better controls, better privacy, and all that, if that's all floating around, think of the advertising we could opt for when we're using something like that. Yeah. Think of the thing that I could say, I will never need a feminine hygiene product ad shown to me. Thank you so much. I would love this kind of ad. Thank you so much. I don't like Ford, but I like this car.
Never say never, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, every now and again, you need a good bit of freshness. I don't know where I'm going, but so you can choose your platforms, and I would say that that's going to be where media and marketing comes, because I think ultimately we all can agree that what we hate in marketing is when we're like accidentally carpet bombed by something we could care less about, and so I think that being able to better target it is going to make advertisers and the business people happier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do people get so isolationist? They'll have only their little limited set of interests, and they'll never say anything outside of their little bubble. At that point, it'll be like hyper customized.
Well, that's where greater data personalization is headed, right? To have ultra relevancy, but then we're back to not having that mass, spray and pray, which is a good thing.
Well, maybe if you can get deeper into the data and see, some kind of correlation between things they might be interested in that are semi-related, and then kind of try to get away with showing them some of that. I mean, expand their universe just a little bit.
Well, I'm with Chris, and maybe I want to feel fresh. Maybe I want my Kotex to combine with Lady Doritos, and maybe I want some blockchain, up in that business. And
it's a weird combo. But okay.
Don't judge me.
I'm not. Yes, and.
Yes, and me. Yes, and me. No, we've got some great questions coming in here. One of the applications people are talking about here, Chris, as you can see, I'm sorry, it's not, when I say show, it's not showing the comment, but is the faster transactions in PayPal, and could it disrupt payments and things like, Square and PayPal and all that other stuff? Because it seems like it's a faster way to get paid.
PayPal is sending out some patent information requests and patent applications that are pointing towards crypto integration of some kind. It goes back to currency again. So things like being able to accept Ethereum, Bitcoin, Stellar, which Kipster keeps mentioning. Stellar is pretty interesting. There's what's happened is in sort of the early integrations, though, one of the things that blockchain is not is fast. It's faster just because you can reconcile faster. So in any kind of circumstance where you need a couple of 3 days to make something happen, we can now do it faster. But real-time money transactions is still not really there. So what will much more likely happen, what will continue to happen, is apps that run on top of blockchain or apps that augment blockchain. There will be things like that where it's a distributed app. They call them dApps because we needed another dumb word to say out loud to other humans. These distributed apps will have technology that makes it seem faster or operate in that way, where we won't see that kind of thing, for instance, at least not immediately. It's like, for instance, telecom, where we need real-time data. Precision things like actual telerobotics, like having a robot surgeon cut you open, that won't likely be blockchain right away. However, I would imagine all the data collected from that will be. So that'll definitely be part of that storyline.
That's fascinating to me. I mean, all the applications, and I think Mitch, if Mitch is still here, I believe he even talked about, sorry, I'm laughing at hashtag blockweed. Yeah, blockweed. Yeah, mixing my blockchain and my weed. He talked about an application, and I don't quite understand it, where, and I believe it was apps for consent, and could you possibly have some kind of blockchain application with like even a dating app? And it blew my mind, and I thought, that's crazy, because I never would think, I mean, that's a level of application that would just never occur to me.
Yes to all.
Because we're women, and we're just like, what did you not understand about the word no, first of all? But but that's, if it advances a good thing, then that's amazing. And I don't know how that would work. I don't know if you've heard of stuff like that.
Yeah, so the application there, I mean, the opportunity for that application there, there's no way to not step on a landmine when you ask me this question. The way this works is that there's so many very legitimate people who have been harmed in some way by someone else, males, females, same sex and otherwise. There's a lot of Me Too going on out there for real good reasons and important reasons. There are also circumstances where that is not accurate, and that someone has post-fact decided, you know what, come to think of it, never mind, I don't want this to be a relationship. And they're kind of causing some interesting challenges, let's say. I'm not judging or voting on anyone's veracity of statement, but I will say that that's kind of tricky. So there is a premise that there are some ways that you could sort of put out to a system, let's say, kind of where you thought your lines might be and all that, and ahead of time. But I think that there's so many things possibly wrong with it. One, it's not a binding contract. Two, it's obviously very flexible ground. I mean, someone might say, before there were these contracts, someone would say, well, I'm not shaving my legs. That way I know I'm not going to have sex with this person. And instead, change their mind after the fact. And they're like, oh, well, I guess I did. You know what I mean? So I don't think the idea consent contracts, I think there's something that's going to happen in that space. I think it's going to be very clunky for a while. I think Mitch and other people will be kept in business for quite a while, validating and verifying that.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of. It's nothing that I would have really top of mind would have even thought of as an application for it. But if it advances consent or changes the dynamic in some way, in a positive way, I'm all for it. It does feel in some ways, maybe we're throwing technology into things that maybe might be overkill. But then again, if it sort of drives it in a positive direction, maybe that's a good thing. I mean,
I think, with all technology, I mean, there's all these phases, right? It's almost like the 7 stages of grief or whatever. There's these phases where everything has the tech baked in because it seems like a good plan, and then we back off of that. There's the robots will kill us phase. We're having these debates back and forth if AI is going to kill us, and meanwhile AI can't really tell my phone autocomplete is AI, and it really has. I don't know why I keep thinking someday I'm going to say ducking, but I'm not. So I think there's still kind of a vast distance between us and the Terminator. So I think with blockchain, we're going to have that sort of thing as well.
Somebody might throw something at you one day, and you'd have to put a status on Facebook saying that you were ducking. It could happen. It's not likely.
That's very true. I wouldn't want to rule out ducking 100%, which is why the word still exists in my phone's dictionary.
Smart. Always be prepared. Always be prepared. Mitch is saying that the legacy, there'll be a legacy systems issue with the new technology. And
you think?
Like,
remember Y2K?
Yeah, I do remember Y2K. I also remember it not being the thing that everybody thought it was going to be. Everyone was like, it's going to shut down. It's going to bring about Armageddon. And it really wasn't. I mean, it wasn't as bad, and so there's a lot of hype there. What do you think about that, Chris?
There's a lot of scenarios where, there's some parallel computing that's going to happen for a while. But one of the things that I really enjoy about that is I think that there's always going to be an opportunity for us to that just makes more jobs, right? That's more business. Yeah. So every time there's one of these things where it's like, oh, my thing doesn't work that way. When I'm looking at and by the way, I'm in no way some kind of coder. So, when I'm saying this, I'm saying it pretend, not like Christopher Penn would. But I started looking today, for instance, at the Hyperledger Fabric, which is a Linux project. And Hyperledger is, there's a whole suite of apps that are being made and then distributed through GitHub, but specifically for these kinds of, applications. And I can tell you, they all look like they'd run on anything. Most of the heavy computing is done in still like AI and data, machine learning and that sort of a thing. All that like grindy power processing is going to still take on there. What is missing, and when you said that people weren't really sure what to do with big data when they were little, that's still true. And there's a lot of things that are missing that people are going to end up having to sort of rent that for a while. Just like, when cell phones first ever came out, there were all these hokey ways that people wanted that. Beepers, beepers were a bridge technology. There was never a need for a beeper. We didn't have what we needed yet. So I think there'd be that. And thank you, Kipster. I think you're pretty funny. Yes.
Thank you, Kipster. Kipster knows technology. I love the idea that you guys would use it for Comedy Couch. Most comedians don't have tons of money, so Bitcoin, I don't know, might be a little suspicious, but I think that's cool that you would do a combo thing there.
It might be even little Bitcoins, very tiny bits.
Like baby Bitcoins.
Oh, that's sad. It's like a kind of Bitcoin. Like hey penny. Bitcoin, hey penny.
Bitcoin. Dan says hey. Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Who is that guy? I mean, who could that possibly be for?
My brother.
He's handsome. That's who Dan is.
I love that facial recognition for chickens is a thing.
Yeah.
So, like, what will be the application for that when you want to identify hot chickens and only let them into your party?
That's right. Yeah. No, it's which chickens are going to kill us is kind of the weird problem out there. But it's really weird. One of the things that I've been reading about a lot is that China is way ahead of us in artificial intelligence and all that. So I can tell you that there's a lot of, races going on besides the space race, and we are most definitely going to have to pay attention to this. I mean, they're ahead of us in a lot of different ways for artificial intelligence. Alibaba, Tencent, all those kind of platforms, they've got blockchain distributed everywhere already. WeChat. So there's just, a massive amount of opportunity for us to fall back and be like, number 7 in this race real quick.
It's a little disturbing because the only thing I've seen people mobilize to write their legislators about recently is the KFC stores being closed in the UK because they ran out of chicken.
Don't mess with the chicken at KFC. Don't do it.
This is why we can't have nice things.
That's what happens when you stop accepting less than hot chickens into your restaurant.
That's right, Michael. We're going to look for chicken consent because I think that's chicken consent. And so chickens are going to have to sign an app with their little, their little web feet, whatever.
Don't be chicken.
That's so great. Oh my gosh. So Kipster's saying, comedy producer would take payments in Bitcoin from our audiences. Yeah. I don't know any. I don't know many comedy producers that are, but I love that in the Bay Area because we're in the bedrock of tech. It makes sense that that's where we would experiment, right? So it makes total sense. Stacy, hey Stacy, She's saying, is blockchain subject to unconscious bias in any way? That is an excellent question. Chris, what do you think?
No, not the way that AI is, which is such a thing. You know what I mean? I would say that with AI and voice recognition and a lot of the technologies that involve machine learning and all that, there's a vast amount of that going on. With blockchain, it's so dull and boring. Like, that's the thing. I can tell you with all my soul that one other reason that adoption is a little weird for blockchain is that people aren't in any way cued. Like, they're not, it's just not sexy. It's like saying, you know what, I got guys' life insurance, check this out, right? Like, that doesn't really happen at parties too much unless it's pen. So I would say that, there's kind of a sexy lag going on in this industry as well.
But it's a really good question when you think about it, because you think about the way design and machine learning, work, and how we're extending systems based on past data. So whatever bias is in that data from the past, we are extrapolating to the future. And so, if you look at even voice recognition systems, it always operated on male voices. And so it would not recognize female voices and such. And I'm a nerd. I'm going to, I know this is visible from the space station. Like, I'm a nerd, so I probably don't need to say that. But I actually was one of the first people to get a hold of an Apple Newton back when the handwriting recognition was just like, And I was one of the first to actually play with a lot of Kurzweil technology, voice recognition technology, and it did not recognize the difference between male and female octaves. And so women had a much higher failure rate for using these kinds of applications, and they still kind of do. So data like that, especially when we talk about voice search and all this interesting stuff, that sort of unconscious bias gets extended in data when we're using past data to extrapolate to the future. And so I think that's a really great question. And it sounds like, you don't think there's a whole lot, but gosh, that's
not in blockchain, but in all the things that will run across it. I mean, that's kind of like saying, is your telephone line biased? I'm going to go with no. But I would say that what'll happen, I mean, there's other biases, right? Though there's financial biases, but the thing is, even as I said right out of the gate, you can download most of the stuff to make a blockchain app for free. You can download all of it, and then you rent time on a blockchain space, kind of like Watson has one. There's a whole bunch of them. And blockchain, by the way, the term is kind of lowercase b because there are multitudes of them. The way the internet threaded together lots of distributed systems back in the Whaley days, when there were Newtons. And I can tell you that there's a lot of opportunity to put bias apps on top of it, but the blockchain itself will be the not so biased.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, there'll be that layer at least will be a little bias free, and that's good to hear. It's the stuff on top of it, I think, that we have to watch. But that's a really great question. Walton chain and RFID. I'm not sure the question, Michael.
I've never heard those words together in order before.
I have. Actually, no. I mean, like what the Waltons have done with Walmart. I mean, they made everybody get on their version of supply chain, and they literally transformed the industry. And RFID, I don't know, Chris, do you know how RFID might change with blockchain, or how that?
So Walton chain exists because of there's a lot of opportunity to kind of mix blockchain plus the Internet of Things, and RFID is very it's a sensor and a communications protocol that's inside of the Internet of Things, and so there's a lot of opportunity in that space to really kind of put together a really cool ecosystem that's going to help those two things connect. And I would say that Michael's right on the money, by the way. Michael's like way ahead of the curve in his knowledge.
He is. He's my friend, by the way. So there you go.
Oh, okay. Is he from the Bay Area as well?
He is.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
No, in fact, shout out to Michael, because he is, not only is he like super knowledgeable about this stuff, but he's very into like kind of herbs and like, whole body, mind, body, kind of spirit blockchain.
So he's a big fan of oregano?
Exactly. We're going to do the mind, body, spirit blockchain retreat, the whole package. Yeah. No, he knows way more than I do on this stuff. So great question. Thank you so much, Michael.
It's a biggie. And the whole thing about, the fact that Alibaba and Walton chain have kind of made a relationship, which is another thing Michael pointed out, this is really, the strategic partnership is, again, one of those situations where the US is so looking over here, and there's like a massive thing going on. And we're like worried about whether or not Trump yells at Putin for poisoning a couple of British people. And like, we are going to be, you know, we're losing our parking space every day. It is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear how far ahead they really are. But Alibaba is, gosh, they've been investing in this technology like while we were just kind of tinkering with it. So it seems like we are kind of playing catch up in a lot of ways. But there you go.
I'm
We're
waiting
not
until
playing
we
it
can.
well.
I'm waiting until we can play mustard. That's all I'm thinking.
That's it. We need more mustard. Yeah, exactly. Did you have a Newton too, Stacy? Oh my God, that's so cool. I didn't know anybody else who got to test the Newton, but the handwriting recognition was just like, that was like before it was even a thing. So it was like, you know, the GPS phone size thing. It was like having a GPS phone out in like the middle of like nowhere in the old days when they were just like these big giant things. And it was crazy. No wonder it failed. Yeah. Mitch says, great convo. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Mitch. Great questions. There you go. So go take care of business. Let's see. I'm making sure that we didn't miss anybody. I don't want anyone to feel like we missed anybody.
So what do like mainstream ordinary people need to be doing to learn about blockchain? Because they've all heard the word and like nobody knows what to do. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, maybe they don't, but you know, plugging my website, go to chrisbrogan.com/blockchain, and I put a vast amount of resources out there that you can sort of pick how you want to learn. There's an audio resource, there's a bunch of videos you can watch, there's a little mini course on Udemy. You can pick whichever way you best learn about things. I would say at least get versed in it. And so I have to explain and kind of qualify myself. I am no way the bleeding edge guy. I never tell people, this is such a cool thing. You know, I almost always just say, that's probably dumb, it'll probably cry. I still say bad things about Snap. I've said it ever since it came out. I still think Snap is dumb except for very limited applications. You know, and I think that there's really no other, you know, grand value there. But I can tell you for sure that this is big. This will be big. This is not minor. This is not insignificant. And if you're one of those people that always has that scenario where you feel like, oh man, I'm like years behind, I'm telling you right now, you will be years behind. Alarms are going off, klaxons, the metal things are coming down. Get the hell on, because if you actually learn now, you might actually have a chance of being on speed.
But I still think there's like an anti-blockchain already starting because people are like, I hear about it everywhere, and so therefore I hate it. Like I've heard people say nobody's going to make any money with blockchain, you know, anytime soon, but people are pouring money into it and get off my lawn.
Yeah, you know what? That's all very reasonable, and they will all work for WeChat and Tencent any day now. They'll have little, you know, green paper hats, and they'll be like the door greeters at our Chinese stores that'll roll in. And I'm not saying that like kind of like crazy tinfoil, but I mean, they are so far ahead.
Regular tinfoil.
Just regular
good
tinfoil.
Yeah.
Just good tinfoil. That's all we need.
Tinfoil.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to see the way that just forget blockchain just for a second, the way that automation and machine learning is really sort of disintermediating everything. And you go into a restaurant now and it's like they're training, you know, the employees are training you how to order your own meal. And then like they bring it to you, but they're practically never needed and you don't see them, you know what I mean, in restaurants. And like, it's fascinating to me, just the level of just complete reliance on all this stuff across the board and what it means for just traditional jobs and how it's really going to change everything. And so I think blockchain feeds that kind of fear and hype, but it also, it's good that we're talking about what it really is, because I do think it gets bandied about way too much without proper explanation and context.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm mostly trying to do is sort of explain that it's a way to trust the information you're receiving a little bit better. It's a way to pass information without so many human hands. It's a way to really do distributed, permission-based, and secured information so that you can trust that information is not going to just go to everyone all the time. It'll go to the people who need it. It reduces a lot of risk and helps take care of ecosystem challenges. It's just, there's so many things. It's a lot lower transaction costs than some of the other ways we do what we do. Real estate, I mean, buying a house with blockchain is going to be, 3 or 4 days faster on average than not doing it this way. And so, I mean, at some point, people are just going to like get really sick of how it's being done right now, and they're just going to be like, forget it. If you don't do blockchain, I'm not going to do business with you. Just like a lot of places online. If someone doesn't take PayPal, for instance, then we have a problem,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I really would never have thought too much about blockchain as a security thing. And then Equifax happened. And I was like, shit, this is not a minor thing. And by the way, we've all stopped talking about how serious it is with all the stuff going on in the news. I mean, the fact that they had one job to do. The only reason that they exist is to secure your data. Like, they couldn't even do that. That's a fail.
It wouldn't be so bad if they weren't such judgmental a-holes about every mistake you've ever made. Your entire life.
Exactly. Why stay in business? And it's like, you had one job to do, keep my data secure, and you couldn't do that. You shouldn't be in business. And is it going to, do you think it's really going to change the way that we, is it going to make us more secure because there's more data out there on us, Chris? Is it really going to?
More than ever before, because there's no way to hack it. You'd have to hack simultaneously several thousand devices and platforms. It just, there's, AI can allow brute force hacking to happen on one device easily, one database easily. Equifax is like a big porous, hole right now because you can't really secure it. And at some point, we're going to have this scenario where, it's William Gibson and Neuromancer kind of space where it's, AI versus AI kind of stuff. It's like Snow Crash, for our nerds in the audience. And I can tell you where we are now is that the challenges and the things we're going to have to face are not going to be fought on a human at a keyboard level shortly, if not now. And so, for instance, when somebody like Chris Penn mentions that, Watson has this new programming language that's just like Scratch that you teach 7-year-olds, it's because we're not going to be smart enough to program our own computers shortly. Not that anybody on this call is especially much of a programmer. So to me, I think that we're like the horse is out, the barn's on fire, and everything from here forward is just going to be shenanigans.
So we're going to be Eloys, and the artificial intelligence and robots, they'll be the Morlocks.
You are not wrong.
I'm going to pretend that I actually know what they just said. But I'm just going to go along. I'm going to yes and you.
Okay.
Nerd.
The Time Machine, H.G. Wells.
There you go.
So I'm thinking that I just read recently that Amazon is like sniffing around the mortgage industry, and I wonder how much blockchain has to do with that.
Well, it empowers it. I mean, that's for sure. So it will become less risky to do mortgage type deals and to loan money for mortgage with things in place like blockchain. So Amazon, who has a massive surplus of money just kind of laying around. I mean, Amazon's kind of running out of things to buy at this point. And Walmart has had this problem in the past, although they're back on it and they're buying stuff. And there's a lot of companies like Apple. They don't really know who they want to be when they grow up anymore. They're just, slowly kind of, rubbing money out all over the place, just spewing it everywhere. But I think that the big opportunity for blockchain is that it will allow more players to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. Are we going to be able to, we talked about going back to the hackability of stuff. A lot of stuff now is incursions from kind of foreign actors, and so a lot of it isn't even, say hacking by, let's just say for the sake of argument that I was a country that maybe wanted to meddle with elections. Let's just say for the sake of argument. Would that be something that blockchain could inhibit? Would that be an application to sort of make sure that we kind of clamp down on stuff like that?
Yeah, so Sierra Leone is the first country to run a blockchain-powered election. That was a short little while ago, a few weeks ago. And so that is an absolute, pure, direct, absolute thing. And so, foreign actors aren't always going to be bad. Like Lupita Nyong'o, she did really good in Black Panther. So,
she was
Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever. She was great.
Actor. But I could say that blockchain as an election tool, we would still have the shenanigans we had because they didn't hack votes. They hacked our influence opportunities in our ports where we pay attention, and they hacked our mindset a little bit. So
more manipulated.
Are we in jeopardy of that? Forever. Just like the question about bias, it isn't the tech, it's the gray juice between our ears.
That's a really good point. No, that's a really excellent point. And it makes me wonder, with all the ads and, Facebook is scrambling, trying to clean up its act and, where the money's coming from, with Facebook ads. Is blockchain in any way related, or could it be used as a way to just say no to, like, Fresha wanted to spend money in the midterm election? Could they use it in some way to say, no, clamp down on that?
I mean, for the voting part of things, yes. The ads part of things, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of talk when you asked about marketers and all that. There's a lot of talk about making blockchain ad platforms, and that will, certainly anywhere where there's a lack of transparency, blockchain permits for the opportunity. But then, anytime there's a chance to be nefarious, we'll find a way to do it. Anything designed by a human is usually able to be foiled by a human. So sometimes it just takes a little bit more work. I feel that what will happen sort of in the interim, though, is that'll be there's gold to be had right now. So someone will come along and say, I'm going to make, Russian-proof blockchain ad network. And they're going to get like $85 billion and a blow-up doll. And I think that, for a while, there's going to be this crazy opportunity time. But I think it'll go away eventually.
I want to
a classy blow-up doll, not one of the low-end ones.
So, I am looking forward to just punking my guy friends and having a drone, come and knock on the door and and the drone drops off a blow-up doll. Hey, yeah, Bob, you ordered a blow-up doll?
You made a Kerry and I.
His wife is standing there going, "Oh, did you really, Bob? What happened there?" And I'll just be laughing. Yes.
When you think about how much money like PPC ad fraud costs businesses, I can see why they'd pour money into any technology that promises to eliminate that type of fraud.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it sounds really fascinating, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us to talk about it. Any last questions, or I just want to make sure bye, Stacey. Thanks for joining us. Michael, thank you for your questions. And Mitch, Michael says, Amazon, I guess, is getting into the medical insurance industry. I don't know much about that, but that they're getting into everything. What aren't they getting into?
I would have said brick and mortar stores, but I would be wrong. So
yeah.
They're getting into everything. They're getting into trouble. They're getting into the future. I think they have a lot of things on the go, but they don't have any spaceships yet. Bezos has a space company on the side, though, so he's trying to catch up to Elon Musk and Richard Branson. So
There's at least one Tesla in space.
There you go.
Yeah,
at least I've been trying to count more, but so far just the one.
I want to go get that one.
Yeah, it makes me mad. It makes me mad because I'm on the waiting list, and it's like, thanks a lot. Now there's a Tesla in space, and they get it before we all get it. We're all waiting.
There's a country somehow, but
there you go. Any final thoughts, Chris, about kind of blockchain in general? You want to leave us with?
My only real final thought is that there's such a proclivity in moments like this for us to say, well, that has nothing to do with me. This one has to do with you. So you can take no action, or you can wait 5 years and be behind. I mean, I've really made a lot of my revenue on people not taking action when the time was the right time. So I would actually encourage people to not do a thing. And then call me when you're a little stuck, and I would like a bag of money, please.
I think we all deserve bags of money,
and I would like a blow-up doll,
and a Tesla, and a blow-up doll of my choosing, and I want it delivered by drones. Yeah. So
or hot chickens
with consent. I'm not a monster, just with consent. So
and a bag of weed Doritos.
A bag of weed. That's right. Hashtag block weed. That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. We got to work on that. So a bag of weed and a bag of money. We're there. Chris, how can people find you? What's the best way?
I just, where's Waldo? And you just kind of look for me on this one. I would say no. ChrisBrogan.com is easy enough. Grab my newsletter because it's the best way to get a sense of whether or not you should do anything with me. And then other than that, I'm just really grateful to have been part of SHEnanigans.
Oh, you have a flash briefing though. Send people.
yeah?
Yeah. People got to get your flash briefing on
You can go to your
Alexa.
Alexa app and say to her, play making the brand flash briefing, and it should find me.
That's awesome. And I love the way you describe everything in such an easy to understand manner, getting rid of the jargon monoxide poisoning. So I'm all for it. Kerry, what you got going on? Where do you want to send people?
Kerry Gorgone everywhere. And the Marketing Profs podcast, marketingprofs.com.
Awesome. And you can send the bags of weed and money to Kerry there.
Send the good-looking chickens my way. I don't want no ugly chickens.
No fatties. Is that wrong? Did I just say that?
I like fat chickens. It's a whole different thing. That'd be
Fat chickens.
Is that rude? Is that rude?
You don't want a scrawny chicken.
Exactly. We're bad.
What do they have in the Bay Area? Your standards are off.
Fabulous. That's what I think.
That's because we're all just like eating soy and we're angry. We're angry because we're not eating Krispy Kremes and we're low on carbs and it's pissing everybody off. That's why we're angry all the time.
Eat cookies and be happy, Kathy.
Okay. I wish. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to keepitithuman.com. You can find me on Twitter at Kathy Klotz-Guest. You can check out my newsletter and all that good stuff. And this has been our 4th episode of Business SHEnanigans, and we're so thankful to have Chris Brogan join us. Thanks, and thanks to everybody that joined us today. We'll see you next Thursday for another episode at 3 p.m. Pacific. Thanks, guys.